All right, let's get started.
Thank you, Chair, and thank you all for attending today. My questions are about PFAS, and the first question is, did the government cause the PFAS contaminations to the groundwater and water table in areas located near military bases across Australia, especially Oakey, Williamtown, Katherine and Richmond?
Senator, as we've said consistently through this process, the defence use of firefighting foams starting in the 1970s through the 80s and 90s is the mechanism that has put these perfluorinated compounds into the ground on some defence bases. We've been open and transparent about that from the point where we realised that was a problem. We don't seek to walk away from the fact that it was defence use of these foams that caused that particular contamination at those sites. I would make the point, though, that at the time those firefighting foams were used, the manufacturers of them said they were safe to use, the regulators didn't say they were unsafe, and they've been used widely by industry, same sort of chemicals, by regional and rural firefighting organisations, used in the petrochemical industry and many other industries across Australia and across the world.
Well, thank you for that detailed response, and thank you for your honesty in admitting that the Defence Forces are responsible. What the choice seems to me to be is either you get compensation to these people who have been affected and in response get compensation from the providers of the chemicals, or the other alternative is to let innocent people pay for it with their misery and their own financial futures. That seems to be the choice. It's a pretty stark choice. Some landowners within the Oakey PFAS zone were allowed to purchase their properties that were known to be contaminated, and they were in fact given the advice that the contamination was not a health risk, but then told, don't eat anything you produce just in case. Others had profitable farms that have now been destroyed by the growing plume. What action are you taking to compensate these people?
The matter of compensation, Senator, is a matter that's been considered by the whole of government. You'd be aware that there are a range of class actions at foot at the moment around classes of people from Williamtown in New South Wales, Oakey in Queensland and Katherine in the Northern Territory. I can't comment on how those class actions might proceed. Obviously that's a matter for the courts. They're due to come before the courts in April next year.
This is a very serious issue. It's not just about people in the immediate affected zones. I have letters here from someone who lives at the Berwick Stud in near Oakey. He's got letters from vets. He's got letters from breeders associations, the Australian Registered Cattle Breeders Association. He got two from them. He's got the Australian Brahman Breeders Association, and he's got a letter from the Charolais Society of Australia. And they're warning that this is going beyond, well beyond, could go well beyond, and will likely go well beyond the region that are affected, because it could contaminate our beef exports and give Australia a bad name. That's a serious issue. So it goes well beyond the local community. It goes to protecting, defending our export industries. So I ask again, well, what compensation to persons or business has already been paid out so far? The number of cases and the median settlement?
So there have been a number of what are termed non-litigated compensation claims made against the Commonwealth directed at the Department of Defence. There were 44 of those claims that have been made over the last few years. Of those 44, there was settlement reached on one claim earlier this year pertaining to an individual from Oakey. The details of those settlements are, of course, confidential by nature of their settlement. There are also two other claims that have been resolved through policy actions that the department has taken. If I may give an example, those claims were for things like, can you connect my property to town water? And that has been done. So we've connected over 350 properties to town water in a range of places. So of those 44 claims, one was settled through a payment, two have been settled is the wrong term, but two have been dealt with through a policy matter, and therefore there are 41 of those claims that remain outstanding. The department is dealing with those claims. The department follows the Commonwealth Government's legal services directions. The Attorney General's department is involved, and that's an ongoing process.
Minister, my question next goes to you. I have some regard for you. I've dealt with you personally, and so these questions are not meant personally, but the people in Oakey have been told by both Liberal and Labor in opposition that when they get into government, it'll be taken care of, and both Liberal and Labor governments have not done so. These people are sick. These people are affected financially. Their lives, in some cases, ruined. I hate to use that word, but their financial livelihoods ruined. They can't sell the land. They can't go into aged care facilities. These people are at their wits' end. Surely someone needs to step up and do something about this.
Well, Senator Roberts, thank you very much. And I'll just tackle your question in a number of ways. First of all, just making the point that PFAS contamination is complex. It requires a whole-of-government approach, and it requires an evidence-based approach, which I know is something that is particularly important to you, is going on the scientific evidence. The government has already committed substantial resources to investigate, remediate and monitor circumstances. In fact, I believe the figure is now we've committed nearly $400 million into those areas. Department of Health, obviously, Department of Defence doesn't have the health sort of specialisation, so we deal with Department of Health. But the Department of Environment has the lead on this particular issue. But just to give you an idea to what Defence has done to date is 17 detailed environmental investigations have been completed and transitioned to management sites, and investigations continue at another 11 sites on this issue. Defence has evacuated already over 13,000 tonnes of contaminated soil to prevent further exposure. We're engaging, as I said, right across government with relevant agencies to work on the various aspects of this on Defence sites. Defence has conducted 137 community engagements to provide residents with updated information and management plans, working in consultation with those local communities. The contracts that have been signed by Defence for the $400 million includes a wide range of activities, everything from the conduct of these environmental investigations, site auditing, water treatment, soil treatment, site remediation, and of course providing alternate water supplies to some of these communities. So at this stage, we don't have an idea of the full cost of this PFAS investigation and remediation, but I can assure you, Senator Roberts, that the government at a whole-of-government level and the Department of Defence is working very hard with these affected communities. But as I said, we have to take an evidence-based approach, and there is still much work to be done about the effect and of PFAS, and that is a process that is continuing to the best of the government's ability, but also to Defence in this case.
The second inquiry, so we've had two and we've just heard of a third. I don't accept your answer as suitable, Senator. The Senate report that was recently concluded early this year called for buybacks of affected property so victims can get on with their lives. That's not happening, is it?
I might have to take some advice from
Senator,
Mr.
at this point, as you'd be aware, and I think it was mentioned in the Senate estimates on Monday with the Department of Environment, the government response is led by the PFAS Task Force, which resides in the Department of Environment. That's still being considered by the government in terms of those recommendations from the second Senate inquiry. Based on the evidence that is available from investigations of sites, from the available science, from the available knowledge about health effects, the government at this time has not committed to a property buyback program.
I'm tired of the phrase best available science, because the Defence Department has advised people not to eat produce off their own farms, and to just keep filtering it, diluting it into the national production.
So we take our advice around health matters from the Department of Health or the various peak bodies.
But the people at Oakey, for example, are tired of this. They can't get on with their lives. They're not willing to infest the national export production. They're just not willing to do that. They can't eat it off their own property What are they to do? How do they live? How do they get into an aged care facility?
Senator Roberts, given you're particularly interested in Oakey, would you like me to just give you a little bit of information about what the department has done to date at Oakey specifically?
Only if it tells me what these people will have so that they can have a future.
Yeah. Well,
I'm not interested in what has been done, what has been done to fix their problem.
No, Senator Roberts, I understand your passion and commitment to that, and I commend you for that. But I think a background to what we have done to date at Oakey, and it's not to say more work is not to be done, but that might also help you with the inquiries that you're getting. So the information I can provide you about Oakey specifically is that a detailed environmental investigation commenced at the Army Aviation Centre at Oakey in December of 2012 and was completed in October 2018. On the 6th of December 2017, the final environmental site assessment and human health risk assessment report were publicly released, and the PFAS management area plan was released on the 10th of July this year. So Defence has established a water treatment plant to treat contaminated groundwater beneath the former fire station, a source area on base, and the plant has been operational since September in 2017. Defence has also completed at Oakey the commissioning phase of a second water treatment plant in June this year. And the water treatment plant is treating PFAS impacted water from another key source area, the current fire training area. So over 65 million litres of water has been treated by these two water treatment plants at Oakey so far. And Defence has also completed the open drain maintenance works in early 2018. Almost 2 kilometres of open drains were excavated and 12,000 square cubic metres of waste material disposed off base to an unauthorised waste disposal facility. And 13 community engagements have occurred at Oakey since December 2012. So from my perspective, I think on this site and others, Defence is doing what they can with available information at the time, both in terms of the environment and also health. It's not to say more doesn't need to be done.
Well, certainly a lot more needs to be done because these people are still living in misery. They have got no income, they have got no future, their property's worthless. How do they get into an aged care facility? How do they get medical treatment? Their lives have been ruined by these defence actions. Now, what I see, the real problem is not the Defence Department, it's the government holding it up. We've had 2 inquiries, we've got a third one going now. And the member for Groom is the chair, I understand, of that inquiry. These people consultation is fine, but only if it leads to action, to fixing it. And that's not happening right now, Senator Reynolds.
Well, Senator Roberts, all I can tell you is, as I have, of the details that the department have taken across all sites for many years now, and also the specific work that has happened at Oakey. And there has been significant work. As I said, there is still more work to be done. We would be the first to acknowledge that. And I'm sure there will be further consultations with Oakey.
It doesn't cut it when the government says there's more work needs to be done. These people have had their lives ruined, and they need to be compensated or relocated somewhere because they bought in good faith when the Defence Department knew about the contamination. They were not stopped from buying. They've just wasted all that money, wasted years of effort, wasted their emotional investment in the area and the community, and they've got nothing to show for it. Nothing.
Well, I will take that as advocacy rather than a question. But point made. It is now 12:30 and we adjourn until 1:30 for lunch. Thank you all.